Hello everyone, welcome to my Euro 2024 preview for England. Today we're going to be taking a look at how they could set up going into the tournament, what their strength is, what their weakness is, and of course a player to watch. Grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a snack, and let's dive right in. So this is the England side that I believe Gareth Southgate will start at the beginning of the tournament. And I must stress that this is Gareth's team. This is who I believe Gareth will field. It's not my team. If you would like to see my team, let me know in the comments below. But we're going to be talking about some of the problem positions or some of the big question marks that are going to be in this side. A lot of the players, we know Declan Rice is going to start, we know Foden's going to start, we know Kane's going to start, so we're not going to focus on this. Instead, we're going to focus on the question marks, and I do feel like there are a couple of them that really do need discussing. And we're also going to be talking about the players who I've put in there, who I think Gareth is going to trust. First of all, we need to talk about the centre-back partnership. I think Stones and Guéhi are a pretty good example of a set amount of players that Gareth has already trusted. I think that the game against Iceland was a really big indicator as to who is going to start in this game. There are some question marks, but I think Guéhi does start. The only question remains around his possible concussion that he had and whether he's okay to continue or not. But I believe if all is well and good, everyone's fit, I think Guéhi starts. Kieran Trippier out on this left-hand side is another real pick for me. I can't see another option if Luke Shaw is not fit, and that's down to Gareth really picking not too many left-backs. It's a real question mark around the team selection, but Trippier for me really does start. Kyle Walker, I didn't really think covered himself in glory against Iceland, and so that's why I think his position is up for grabs. Trent Alexander-Arnold has really come in and made a difference on a number of occasions, and I think he could really give Walker a run for his money. Now, when we're talking about running, I do think that's why Walker's going to be in the side because of his recovery pace, but apart from his recovery pace, I haven't been too impressed by his overall performance, so that remains to be seen. Kobbie Mainoo did struggle at times in the game against Iceland, and that's why I think Conor Gallagher comes into this midfield. I just think Gareth is going to look at it as a better balance. The movement and the running power of Gallagher to be able to go forward and press and help out with Bellingham when he needs to, as well as keeping Rice a little bit freer to go and close down when he wants. I just think balances out this England side a little bit more. It's not to say that I wouldn't play Kobbie Mainoo, I just think that Gareth might look to Gallagher as a bit of extra legs, and that might help the other two. As for the front three, I think that it's pretty solid. Saka is going to play, Kane is going to play, and I think you've got to find a space for Foden. The only question is whether Foden goes in midfield with Bellingham, and I don't think he does, because I think Gareth is going to want Bellingham to be a little bit further forwards, like how he's played for Real Madrid. Of course, this is set up using the 4-2-3-1, and this is how I believe Gareth Southgate will line up his England side. Jordan Pickford is an obvious pick for me, but this is the side, and there are some good points in this, but there also are some bad points. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out. As far as strengths go, I think England's attack is definitely one of them. When we talk about the quality of players that currently are starting for England and really making a name for themselves, you're talking about Phil Foden, you're talking about Bukayo Saka, Harry Kane. Harry Kane is arguably one of the best strikers in the world currently. Jude Bellingham is arguably one of the best youngsters. Phil Foden has had a sensational campaign with Manchester City, and Bukayo Saka is probably the best right winger in England, or at least one of the top right wingers in England. So really, England have no real excuses when it comes to how they go forwards, how they attack, but there always is going to be a question mark with how Gareth Southgate sets them up. Really, a strength of theirs should be their attack, but there is always that question mark. But there is no doubt that when you look at the quality that England have, I'm talking Phil Foden having 0.6 penalty goals per 90. Combine that with Jude Bellingham, and England actually have two players that are in the top 2% in terms of non-penalty goals from midfield. That is incredible. And then you look at Harry Kane, who is just a monster. He's nearly averaging a goal a game. 0.83 non-penalty goals per 90, but he's also able to drop deeper, create those lines of passing, have those progressive passes, drop a little bit deeper, allowing for Saka and Foden to enter the box, to go forward forwards. Bellingham as well. That might be a dynamic that you could see as well. Watch for Bellingham to really go beyond Kane. Kane looking for those passes in beyond towards Bellingham, towards Foden and towards Saka. Of course, you've got the likes of Conor Gallagher or even somebody else in this England midfield to be able to allow them to go forwards. England's strength is their attack. It just all depends on whether Gareth Southgate can unlock the potential of these high quality stars. I think weakness for England is pretty obvious, and if you heard me in one of the previous segments, you'll know that I'm not exactly too convinced by England's defence. I think there are massive question marks when it comes to who England play, how they play and how they set up. I mean, we just need to start by looking at the left back position. England have one left back going into the tournament and he's not fit. If that doesn't ring alarm bells for everyone, I don't know what will. Kieran Trippier is a good understudy and I think he's a good player, but he hasn't exactly overperformed at Newcastle this season. If anything, he's had a bit of a dip, and I don't think his defensive numbers are particularly great either. Yes, he's great at progressing the ball, but when it comes to actually defending, I don't really see too much confidence there. I might be a little bit overboard and it might be a little bit controversial, but I just don't quite see it. And I've got to say that when you look at a number of these players, I don't really see any out-and-out defenders here. Kieran Trippier is okay, but he's been a little bit lacklustre of late. Mark Gahey's statistics aren't really very good either. I mean, these are them, and I just don't quite see it. One tackle per 90-ish, 1.25 tackles per 90, 1.29 aerials, 1. Now you might say it's not all about the statistics, but the eye test isn't really telling me anything either. And as good as I think John Stones is, and as much of a mainstay is, I thought the balance between him and Harry Maguire was actually quite good. I wasn't overly convinced by Gahey and Stones' partnership in the game against Iceland, and that leads me into the amount of game time that these players have had with each other. Do they have enough balance? Out on this right hand side, we mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold and whether he could make a name for himself out in this right back slot, and I've got to say that defensively Kyle Walker isn't too good, really. And yes, you could point to the fact that Manchester City have most of possession, which means that Walker doesn't have to defend as much, but still, I'm a little concerned. As good as Walker's recovery pace is, I haven't been overly convinced with him as a defensive right back for England. So overall, I'm a bit concerned, and I think a massive weakness is the defence for England. And Declan Rice is going to have a lot of work to do, especially if you're asking Gallagher to move forward, especially if you're asking Bellingham to go forwards. Bukayo Saka is going to really come back and help out that right-hand side. But will the left-hand side have enough defensive cover with Foden? I'm not so sure. Will Trippier be completely comfortable? Again, it's a lot to ask. And then you're looking at this defensive partnership who have barely played together, if at all. A lot of really concerning things for England when it comes to the defence. And for me, that's a major weakness. Player to watch for me has to be Declan Rice when it comes to England. If England are going to do anything in this Euro tournament, I think Declan Rice is going to be at the absolute heart of it. Whether it be going forwards to try and make a blindside run, or whether it's shuffling across from left to right to make sure that he's able to stop counter-attacks but also stop the progression of play, I think he's going to be the player that is going to make things happen for England. A lot was asked of him when he came into that Arsenal side a few months ago, and whether he could step up his game to be able to push Arsenal on to another level, and he has done, and I think he's going to do exactly the same for England. He's able to take challenges and rise to them, and that is quite rare in a couple of players. So when we look at his statistics, it's no surprise that he is pretty much fantastic in nearly every single field. But what I'm most impressed with in this particular season with Arsenal is his progressive game. 7.69 progressive passes per 90 from a defensive midfielder, and one that has started to transition his game into a left-sided 8. Really impressive from Declan Rice, and if England need a little bit more oomph from their defensive midfielder, or even from their midfielders in general, I think Declan Rice is going to give it. 2.2 progressive carries as well, able to progress the ball forwards, and if Conor Gallagher isn't a player that's going to do that, if you don't have the likes of a Jordan Henderson anymore, I think Declan Rice is that player to really take that mantle and go forwards. Not to mention that he could also get a goal with 0.16 non-penalty goals per 90. That puts him in the 85th percentile. 0.2 assists per 90. It put him in the 86th percentile. And then defensively, he's also very good as well. Reading the game with interceptions, with blocks, clearances, and of course, very good with those aerial duels. Declan Rice for me is going to be at the heart of everything England do well. And I do think that a lot of people are obviously, for good reason, going to be looking at Jude Bellingham. But for me, Declan Rice is going to be the key to England performing well at this year's Euros. So overall, this England side have some of the best attackers the European stage has seen in quite some time, especially from an England team. They have a good amount of midfield presence in Declan Rice, the likes of Conor Gallagher, and of course, the main man himself, Jude Bellingham. Out on the wings, Bukayo Saka, Phil Foden, Anthony Gordon allow for strength and depth down the flanks, providing a lot of assistance to their main forward, Harry Kane. But of course, the defensive frailties is something that we cannot miss, and the fact that they do not have a main out-and-out left-back fit at the minute makes them a real contender for a bit of a shock. Mark Gahey having not too many minutes leading into this tournament, and then not really striking up an instant partnership with John Stones does leave room for concern. The continuous shape-shifting and changing between Kyle Walker and Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to become a little bit more of a hindrance than it will a positive, I think. And overall, unfortunately, the question on the end of everyone's lips is going to be, can England win Euro 2024? Yes, they can, of course they can. But will they? Is it a likely thing? I'm not so sure. And as much as I would like it to happen, I just see too many question marks. Question marks around the defence, question marks around how England progress the ball forwards, and in the end, a massive question mark around the manager. And that is the biggest one for me. Can Gareth Southgate take this group of talented players forwards and win a tournament? And unfortunately, with this current team selection, with the way that the defence is set up, even though they have some of the best attackers in the world, I'm not so sure. And that leaves me at a bit of an impasse. I don't know what to think about this England side, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they set up come the start of the tournament. But of course, guys, let me know how you're expecting England to do in this tournament and what you're expecting from their performances at the Euros. Are you expecting them to win? Do you think they should? More importantly, do you think they will? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.